Hey man, what's up with y'all? Today we got some red pill content for y'all, you feel me? We're gonna call this the trauma effect because a lot of people do go through a lot of things that end up shaping them into the person. What do we finna get into it, shit?
Let me imagine.
From sitting here and speaking to, I don't know, somewhere over 100 different people that come from all walks of life, but specifically people that are successful in their industries, and you talked about, how an anomalous early upbringing can create sort of abnormality in an adult. A lot of the people I sit here are successful because of some kind of abnormality, or at least their interpretation of some kind of early event that caused them to have some sort of abnormal belief about themselves, that they're not enough, so they become a billionaire or a gold medalist or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
One of the things that I thought I could predict is, I thought after doing 100 episodes, if they told me the traumatic event they'd been through, I could predict the outcome in them. But there's a disconnect there because, I'd sit here with a guest who went through one of your capital T traumas, like domestic violence.
Yeah.
And one of them might become incredibly angry.
Yeah.
And one of them might become the most peaceful, loving person I've ever met.
So this right here is what I'm talking about with the title, the traumatic effect. You feel me? Like, it's basically what he just said. He's gonna explain it a little bit more. I'm just here to learn. I feel like we all can learn something from it because I've been through like some things in my childhood. Like I can't, and even into my teenage years, you feel me? And as a little kid, like we all go through certain stuff, and I know that I've been through certain stuff. Eventually, he gonna go through certain stuff. Like I can't control that. It's life. Life, we go through things. You know what I'm saying? It's just about how we come back from it or how we move forward from it, type shit. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that taught me that there's this thing in between the event, which is what you call interpretation.
Yeah.
And I found that as that kind of makes it really difficult to diagnose.
Well, now look. So the two examples you gave, that really peaceful person may be really peaceful for genuinely good reasons, such as they found the milk of human love flowing through their veins, and they've had some spiritual reconciliation with the world, or they may have genuinely learned compassion for themselves and others. But they could also be very nice and peaceful because they're suppressing their healthy anger, because they're actually sitting on their rage unconsciously, which is going to show up in the form of some kind of health manifestation, I guarantee you, later on. So you can't tell from the outside without asking some questions. Or I can give you the example of a Donald Trump who had a really traumatic childhood. I mean, his father was as described by his psychologist niece, Mary Trump. His father, Trump's father, who is Mary's grandfather, was a psychopath and who really demeaned and harshly treated their children. So Trump decides unconsciously that, by the way, I'm not talking about his policies here. This is not a political debate. And in the book, I point out that his opponent was also traumatized, Hillary Clinton. So this is a ecumenical view of trauma in politics. I'm not choosing sides. I'm just saying that you can see his trauma in every moment he opens his mouth. His grandiosities need to make himself bigger, more powerful, aggressive, and he's as much as said in his autobiography that the world is a horrible place, a dog-eat-dog place, where everybody is after you. Everybody wants your wife and your house and your wealth, and this is your friends, never mind your enemies. But that's the world he lives in. Now that world that he lives in reflects his childhood home. He developed that worldview. He came to it honestly, you might say, because that's the world that he lived in. And he gets to be really successful in this crazy world. Financially, although people question, was he really as big a success as he says he was? But he certainly was successful politically, if by success you mean the attainment of power.
Alright, so I'm finna just add a little 2 cents into it because I kind of can picture what he's speaking on. So basically, the way that Trump was raised is like the world that he was raised in, the type of lifestyle he was raised up around. He's still living in that world. Like even though things around him has changed, even though the world is different, even though times is different, he's still stuck. You feel me? In that world he grew up in, like. That's basically like what I'm picking up. Like I could probably add a little more to it, but I actually want to, you feel me, listen a little more.
His brother, on the other hand, Mary Trump's father, Trump's niece's father drank himself to death. And they were both responses to the same. You can never say it's exactly the same for two kids, but there was that toxic home environment. One ends up dead as an alcoholic. The other ends up at the pinnacle of power. And when I look at them both, I see dysfunction there, significant dysfunction there.
So one of the consequences of that early upbringing was it materialized itself as sort of addiction, and the other got the same psychological reinforcement, or the thing missing from power and work and money.
Donald Trump learned that the way to survive is to be aggressive and harsh and competitive, and to get the other before they get to you, which is a faithful reproduction of his early childhood experiences. So for him, these were not choices so much as survival techniques. And when they talk about his lying, well, I don't know when he's lying or when he's not, but my sense is that often he actually believes what he's saying. And actually his biographer, or the person who co-wrote his quasi-autobiographical The Art of the Deal, this writer says that he's never met anybody who's so capable of believing something that's not true to be true if he wants it to be true. But that's the mark of a traumatized child, a denial of reality. It is an inauguration. There was a certain number of people that came to he couldn't stand it that there weren't as many people there as came to Barack Obama's inauguration. There were a much smaller number of people there. He created this reality where many more people came to his inauguration. Now, what age behavior is that? That's a 4-year-old, but more kids came to his party than my party. That can't be true. But that's Donald's way of dealing with reality. It's not a moral failing as such. That's how he survived. And these survival mechanisms then get to form our personalities. And again, in this world, sometimes they pay off in certain ways.
Is that often the case with pathological liars? They've learned to lie as a way to survive.
Oh, absolutely. The German
let's talk
philosopher
about
writer Friedrich Nietzsche said, people lie their way out of reality who have been hurt by reality. And so I've lied, like when I had my shopping addiction, I lied every day to my wife, and even afterwards, when she stopped trying to change my behavior, I said, just tell me. If you're going to shop, you're going to spend another $1,000 on music. Just tell me. I still couldn't, because I was so ashamed of it. And so the lying became like a way of survival for me.
Defense against reality.
It's a defense against reality, and it's a defense against being judged. Well, that says something about my childhood. Nobody's born a liar. As we say in this book, there are congenital liars, but there are no congenital liars. No one-day-old baby tells any lies. No one-day-old baby pretends anything. If we end up pretending in any way at all, to the extent that we do, it's because we had to learn that's what we must do to survive.
You said something at the start when I gave the example that I sat with a guest here who went through domestic abuse,
Yeah.
and they are the calmest person.
Yeah.
And then you said, well, maybe they're suppressing it. And in fact, the minute you said that, it reminded me of something they said, which is they said to me on this podcast that they had angry outbursts all the time. So sometimes their child will come up to them,
Yeah.
And want to play when they're working,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll snap.
Yeah.
And they're trying to deal with that.
Yeah. That's what I meant, that they're sitting on this volcanic crater of anger, which sometimes bursts out of them. So their demeanor is like a really developed, suppressed way of handling rage, which rage, when they were children, had they expressed, would have got them into more trouble. So suppressing it, repressing it, became their survival. It's all about survival, you see. So it became their survival mechanism. Now, that person, as long as they keep it that way, they're at risk. They're at risk for mental health diagnoses like depression. Because what is depression? It means you're pushing something down. That's all it means. You want to be pushed down.
Like, I feel like with this information, bro, like, it can unlock so many doors inside people. Like, bro, this shit real valuable. This shit, like, nobody gonna tell you this shit right here. It's from motherfuckers who know what they talking about, bro. Like, you have to real life find and come up on information like this, bro. This ain't just everywhere.
Our natural emotions. Why do we push them down? Because we had to survive. So that person, I don't know, I can't prognosticate what's going to happen to them, but if they don't work it out, in general, they're at risk for some kind of mental or physical manifestation. That's my experience.
Quick one. Some of you may know we've got a brownie sponsor on this podcast.
We're going to cut it right there.